Well, it's 6 o'clock. We'll call our meeting to order, and we'll have the Pledge of Allegiance when we have our regular school board meeting. So with that, I'll ask for roll call.
Rick Schultz is absent. Lauren Steinrock.
Here.
Terry Engel is here. Pat Tyre.
Here.
Amy Erke.
Here.
Rich Mueller is absent. And Aaron Phillips is absent.
Our meeting tonight is for the Truth and Taxation meeting, and Mr. Myhock, will you begin with that?
Yeah, I will, and I am going to turn it over to Carla, who will give her presentation on the Truth and Taxation, the 24-25 budget and proposed property taxes.
Okay, yeah, welcome everybody. I'm gonna stand here. I don't know if you guys realize it, but since 2020, when we've been streaming this, we keep an email open also in the event a person's listening and have a question. So we keep a watch on that. But again, welcome to tonight's Truth and Taxation hearing. After a little reminder on why we do this hearing, how the levy is set, I'll be reviewing the 24-25 budget that you guys adopted last June, and then we will talk about the proposed property tax levy for NRHEG, which means the levy will be certified tonight, assuming you do, later in the meeting, for payment by taxpayers in calendar year 2025, and it's money that we will use in fiscal year 26, so 25-26. All right. Okay, you can flip to the tells a little bit about the history when Truth and Taxation law was passed, why we have this meeting. You know, honestly, we could literally do this in 2 slides. Our requirement is to go over the 24-25 budget, and it's to show the proposed levy, and then to be available for public comment. So, but we have a half an hour, so we're going to talk about a few more things than that. If you can flip to the next one. So as you guys know, the state legislature sets the state formulas, makes the rules for non-voter approved options, and local school districts then can hold voter approved operating referendums. And ultimately you guys set it, but so much of it's governed by the legislature's formulas. We talked earlier, the difference for public schools, we have limited authority compared to other government entities. Other governing boards have more freedom to make those decisions. The school board is limited in decision making, and voter approval is required for some funding authority versus cities and counties. Okay. How is my property tax determined? Now if you can go back up once. So the value of your property is the starting point. The county sets the value, school district doesn't get a say. So sometimes we'll have concerns here at this meeting. You guys aren't able to do anything with that. So the property value is established. The next step is the formula is applied to your property value as set by legislature. County auditor completes the calculations for the county and district. You know, in September you pass that maximum levy, we send it up to them. They do all the calculations. You guys from School Board 101 have probably learned, and you're probably learning along the way, that operating referendums, local optional revenue, that's all based on referendum market value, okay? School bonds, building bonds, that kind of things are based off of net tax capacity. Net tax capacity affects all parcels of property in the district, commercial, industrial. It's higher tax burden than a homestead. Referendum market value, properties valued the same would pay the same rates. Ag properties, excluding the house, garage, and 1 acre, and seasonal rec are not included when we do those things, okay? The county, or in our case, counties, collect the money and distribute it out to us. Okay, before we get into our budget, this slide, you've seen something like this before. We get this from PMA, Michael Hart and our financial advisors. They like to share, along with NRHEG, has some sample slides. So what this one illustrates, you've heard it before, from 2003 to today, if state aid had kept up with inflation, we would be sitting at about 8,000 and some odd dollars per pupil, or $1,300 higher than what it has. Okay, so, but with that said, you know that 2 years ago there was a push at the legislature for 5 and 5 on the formula, when things were looking really good. We ended up getting 4 for last year and a 2% increase for this year, which is something. But then now starting next year, we're supposed to get that built-in inflationary increase. You know, so we would sit here this time of year in years past, when budget projections come out, like we saw last week, that's looking bleak already for the state of Minnesota going forward, then we get nervous and we'd sit here and at times have to plan on 0 and 0. Now, we'd like to believe they'll, until the legislature changes things, we at least are gonna have something built in, but now we wait and see as they come into session. Okay, then as we flip ahead to the next slide, this is just a reminder of the budget you passed back in June. Those with the asterisk, the general fund, the community ed, and the debt service funds, those all have a tax levy component to them. You'll see later when you approve those 3 things have the tax levy. Just one second. So this budget, if you go back up a second, Sue, you know, we haven't come back to you with an updated budget. We're a little bit in limbo right now with this large grant that we know we're getting. You know, the state of the camera project, these guys are working hard, meeting with companies. So we're not ready yet to come back and say, yes, we got that grant, but we're finding, you know, prices may have increased. So we're not ready for a budget adjustment. But when you approved this, you'd see we were overspending considerable. You also are very aware of where our fund balance is, and you went ahead and approved that with that camera project in there. So we'll come back to you after the first of the year, I think, once you guys have a better idea which direction we're going and what that's gonna cost us. But, okay, thank you, Sue. Now, if we go to this next one, it's just, you know, for your information, timeline for taxpayers. Just a quick review. In March of '24, taxpayers received their preliminary values of their properties along with, this is what, I remember once when we had a big jump on a property out at Beaver Lake, you know, it was that sheet behind the property tax statement that nobody looks at. That's where you first find out what kind of value they're gonna put on your property. Then in September, we go through our process, you guys approve max, we send that off to the county. Counties then deliver those property tax notices to everybody. We got them a week or 2 ago. We hold this meeting, later you approve it, we send that back in, and then next spring we'll see those notices that pay that amount for our levy. Okay. Information on the appeal process. You know, we've never had many people come to these meetings. I think people do a good job of reading these statements and the process on the back to talk with the counties about their values, so they know we can't help them on that here. A lot of information's out there. I think a lot of people, if you're like me, you look past a lot of that, but it's there. Okay, now if we go back down, here's a sample proposed 25 tax statement that you're very familiar with. We received these a few weeks back. Again, that's where we will sometimes expect some questions. Tells a little bit about the process in a prettier way that we talked about before. Estimated market values are established. They apply those rates to the type of property you have, and that determines how the tax levy is spread out amongst our people. Couple things to highlight this year that some of you may or may not be very aware of, but the homestead market value exclusion is increasing in Minnesota for taxes payable in '25. This will reduce taxes for residential homestead properties valued up to $517,000. So if you go down to the bottom, the ag homestead classification also is increasing. In '24, it was 2.15, it's going to 3.5. So can be great news for individual farmers or whatnot, but unfortunately with this one, is that just takes my savings perhaps and gives it to you, and yours might go up, because we still gotta collect the same levy, but that homestead changed, and it did result in a number of large ag owners maybe seeing some relief there, so. This screen shows share of tax liability. You've seen this one before, and you know, one of the issues I think in small towns like us is we don't have a lot of commercial property, and while they're only 12% of our population, they get tagged for just under 30% of our share. You know, that's what's tough. You got to build that tax base. Whereas farms, think again, you know this, big, almost 20%, but their share is quite low since that ag to school came into play. We'll talk about that in a little while because we always talk about that. Permanent law came in 2017. They've stepped it up to 70% and it's going to stay there. We have heard from time to time, you know, in 23 legislative session, that's when they hit on so many subjects. You know, that was a big one. And we heard this was very close to passing at 75 to 80 to, you know. So we'll watch that one, see what happens. It's important in an area like us where there's a lot of ag industry. You don't have to go back, but just a reminder on that ag to school credit, the nice thing with that is our people benefit and that money is not spread out to the rest of us. It comes from the state. The way the law reads right now, so we'll see. Ag to school credit, we can't see that on our tax levy because it's just an individual thing. All people with ag properties see it on their proposed statement. This credit is a replacement of locally collected taxes. Comes from the state general fund. State's general fund revenues come primarily from income and sales taxes. So that's just showing where that shows up if that's a credit that your property may have. Okay, as we get into possible reasons for changes to your parcel in this levy. So oftentimes what we're seeing is a change in value more so than classification in our area. If your homestead application drops off, you know, things can skyrocket. But changes in enrollment numbers, changes in valuations of property within the district, local decisions, adjustments for prior years, legislative changes. Those are all things that can affect our levy. And, you know, working with our advisors, we try to work hard at keeping it somewhat steady so we don't see these, you know, we know when we're gonna have some debt paying off. We figure out, are there some things we need to do to come in and replace that to try to keep things quite level and not have a lot of peaks and valleys. Okay, this one and the next slide, these are a couple of things that you can study on your own, but I'll just briefly try to say, Michael Hart with PMA put these together for us, and he's using our levy numbers that you may approve later in the meeting. And he just said that the state is estimating that the district's valuation is growing by just under 9% from year to year, okay? In other words, things are going up. So what that first slide showed you was if your property tax increased by, say, 4%, because the RMV, the referendum market value, is going up closer to 9, even with your property going up 4%, us applying our levy to it, you may see a tax decrease where we're concerned, you know, where the school district's concerned. So we talk a lot, I'll catch up with Sue here. This chart is the estimated tax impacts on residential properties that experience a 0% increase, a 4%, and a 10% value increase on their properties, and just how applying our levy numbers, what that does for them. So again, your house could go up in value by 4%. We approve this levy tonight, and yet your taxes paid to the school can still go down. So he just likes to run numbers and put those things together. This next one talks about specifically our numbers on the ag to school impact. The state will pay approximately $574,000 of our 1.3 debt service levy for payable to 2025 via that ag to school credit. Having that in place really has helped schools be able to pass building bonds because it has made a tremendous difference for the ag owners in our district in the state of Minnesota. This slide looks familiar to you. You've seen this before. Kelsey, when she was here with Abdo, presented this back in October. You guys know where we are compared to our region and compared to the state, but we like to share this with people at our meeting to see where NRHEG ranks compared to others, either per student, average district, per district property tax per home. You know, it's not news to you. We, relative to others, are taxing our people very low. This one too you've seen before when I would talk about we work with our financial advisors to try to keep things level. That royal blue in the first column represents the ESG Alt Facility Project, which dates back to 2008. Good job, Sue, I'm going to be thinking of this. We designed that to, we structured those payments for when that paid off. Okay, this way, the folks at Northland Securities, it was Michael Hart at the time, structured those payments related to our 2019 ISG Knudsen voter approved projects around that. So in other words, when those paid off, we started paying more, and that's what that light blue represents, that 2019 project. The red illustrates what was approved in the fall of 23. The first 10 years show paying back the LTFM projects and the abatement bonds, which relate to our parking lots. If you remember, they did not want to go beyond 10 years with those because parking lots start breaking down. You know, we'll have to put some money back into them by then. And then those last bars were showing the LTFM plus projects that are almost done. We have a little bit more to pay yet on the SiteLogic project, but close. So, okay, so now the proposed tax levy. You have a couple of attachments, and I always say to you, if you want to look at the 30-page document, you're welcome to. Actually, it's more than 30 because I usually tell you to go to page 30. The state this year came out with this supplemental report that makes it so simple. It starts at page 30. So you just see those numbers. And this is basically what it shows by the payable 25 general amount of money going to the general levy, the community ed portion of that, and then the biggie paying back the debt service. All in all, when the values that have increased, they would take into account our enrollment, they apply all the different rules, they projected a levy increase for us of 2.7%. Nothing new that you guys changed, it's just we keep doing the same programs, they apply all the formulas to it, that's the net result for us. 64,739 additional, or 2.7%. The board resolution that you will see later at the end of the meeting. I won't read through this. This is how it reads, if you recall. That's what that looks like. Which brings us to our questions slide. Any questions for you guys? Any questions from you guys?
I have a couple. Just to clarify that the egg to school right now is at 70%, and that's what legislature has it moving forward.
Correct.
And if any
Until they-
adjustments or increases, that would take legislative action to.
Right, it would be this spring, so I suppose it would come into play, they would apply it by the time we're doing this next fall. And again, they were very optimistic. They just, I mean, I don't have to remind you of some of the, I mean, that was a record-breaking legislative session with all the changes that they did in '23, so they just didn't get to this one. So that one we're watching, and then the other big one we're watching, us and everybody else, that we were told, they're just so confident it will go through, is being able to, use LTFM dollars for our roofing projects. And that's the one, if it's over $100,000 per site, which we know to put a roof on, that's not a problem, then we can non-voter approved, you can make that decision. So that's an important one for us, because we're trying to save for our next roof project. We haven't done a major roof project in a while, and you know what, these flat roofs. Okay, that was one.
And just tied in with tax levies and whatnot, you mentioned about the inflationary rate increase as far as our funding increase for next year and years moving forward.
Right.
And I think it's important to note too that obviously that the costs that businesses, schools, whomever incur or have are oftentimes greater than the inflationary rate. It could be mandates from the state, it could be, if it's the unemployment insurance, if it's the family leave, if it's the READ Act, if it's, contracts, whatever the case is, that, so right now, the base is, well, right now the only increase, or the increase that we will see next year would be based on the inflationary rate. And I know that the different educational agencies or associations that I belong to, with many others in the state, want to go back and kind of revisit maybe the intention of what that legislative action was, that if we're looking at a 2% increase to our formula next year, we know that our expenses are going to be greater than 2%. And so again, if the intention was that we would get our state approved increase and then have the inflationary rate attached to that. But right now, again, it's only the inflationary rate. So that has a huge impact on school funding or funding from the state, which obviously then is tied into the funding that we receive locally with our levies.
Yeah, that's a very good point, because, the budget forecast we got last week, it is very concerning, because we are dealing with a number of things. Today I sat down with Jason, for me to get a handle on the number of people required to do the 36 hours of READ Act training, and we've now had the first, I think the majority of them halfway through submit those expenses, And I said, okay, so we're expecting this many times 36 hours times this rate, and that isn't near what we've gotten in funding yet,
Yeah.
but I hope you. Our hourly unemployment, it went up 20,000 from last summer to this summer, and we've gotten, so they had a thing come out that says, if you do this survey and let us know, we had numbers and whatnot. If you do the survey, it's not required, but if you do it, we'll give you your 90% now. If you don't do it, well, they didn't say it, but it wasn't until we got the 90% that they said, for those that didn't do it, they aren't gonna get their 90% until January of 2026. And I mean, I'm sure they'll get it, but I don't know that we'll get our 10% that we didn't get once they divvy all the money out, because those numbers weren't so high once people understood the program, So lots of things right now, and you've had unfunded mandates your whole life, that.
TDD.
Yeah, so you know that, but there's a number of them right now that we're just,
It's crazy.
gotta watch, that we can't control. But anyway, Mrs. Bentley.
So the full budget of the school district for the coming school year is $13,409,000. What percentage of that is from the state? That is, what dollar amount of that is from the state, and what dollar amount of that is from levies?
So there's also federal money, there's local money, there's all those things. So
I
what we
guess-
can do is we can take this, that last slide, the 2.466651,
Mm-hmm.
and we can divide that by the 13,409 that we, no, 13,168 that we passed, 188, and I can give you that percent. So you're wanting to write down what percent?
I really only wanna write down what the levy amount is that school district, or that people in the district are paying toward that 13 million.
Right,
Or
That
what the
what percent?
anticipated levy income is.
right. So this is the levy income, and then we've got the 13, and then we just gotta do the math, as far as the percent.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. This 2.466651 divided by the 13,188. And that, again, that's the levy, then we've got state aid, then we've got federal aid that we talked about. And then we've got, local revenues, grants, admissions, gates.
I wanted to make sure I understood. Thank you.
Sure, yeah, and,
So then that won't be a true percent then?
well, no, but she can, a true percent of the levy makes up this percent of this,
Okay,
that's true.
okay.
And the history of like levies is, again, these are my words, that because the state knows they are not funding education fully through all the other taxes they collect, they put that burden, or they put that onto the local district to receive that money from our community members.
Correct, especially when a district has an operating, and you guys know, we're one of few that don't have operating yet. Buildings, I remember when Olivia played at Monticello one weekend, I remember leaving there thinking that this is a public school district, just like us. But they have a heck of a tax base, so they can build a building like that, the Taj Mahal, even though they're a public school building, So the building, the debt service, that can vary, but yeah, the operating things, that is passing it on to the local taxpayers. And I think we believe someday we'll need to pass an operating to keep up, like all the other districts have. But I think it can be proud that we don't yet. Anyway, so that, if there are no more questions, Mr. Tupence, do you have any questions?
I'll ask later.
Fair enough, okay. We talked about the READ Act a little bit in our discussion today. So, all right, well, we can wrap that portion up then. We don't have any questions on.
If there aren't any more questions, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to adjourn the special board meeting, Truth and Taxation. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Carried.